Hello friends, did you hear today's weather forecast? It is predicted that there will be rains in the next 2 days. I'm sure you too would have noticed that it is very cloudy today. Have you ever wondered how this happens? Today, Karthik is trying to find the answer for this very question from his elder brother Ashish.
Ashish Bhaiya, why are there so many clouds today?
It is predicted that there will be heavy rains tomorrow and day after because of the clouds.
There is also no air. I wanted to go out and play with my friends.
You mean to say there is no breeze? Air is always around us.
I don't understand. Tell me more.
Hold your hand in front of your face and breathe in deeply. Now gently blow outward towards your fingers. What do you feel? Does it feel cool and tingly? What you felt blowing past the tips of your fingers is commonly referred to as air.
Yes, it does.
Air is one of the primary things that make life on Earth possible.
But what is air? And do all planets have it?
Air is a synonym for atmosphere. The Earth's atmosphere or air is made up of a variety of gases and other particles. Most of the planets in our solar system and even some of the moons have atmospheres. However, the atmospheres of these planets and moons are very different from that of the Earth.
What is the atmosphere of Earth made of?
The atmosphere of our home planet is made up of 3 primary gases. These gases are oxygen, nitrogen and argon. In addition to these 3 gases, there are many other gases in the atmosphere in trace or small amounts. Additionally, there are small particles or particulates floating in the atmosphere such as dust, water and pollen. As you blew air past your fingers, did you see anything?
No, I didn't.
Air is invisible, tasteless and scent-free. The particulates floating in the atmosphere are, however, another story. Smoke is one type of particulate that commonly pollutes the atmosphere, allowing us to see the air. Other particulates that allow us to see the air might be steam, dust, or in extreme cases, even pollen.
I don't understand that well even now.
Try this experiment. Come near this window where the sunlight is shining through the glass down onto the floor. Lie down beneath the window and look up through the light. What do you see?
I can see the sunlight reflecting off of the particulates in the air. There are dust particles as well as tiny hair follicles.
Correct. In addition to the particulates that are visible, there are many more that are not. They are too small to be seen by human eyes. These particulates are around us each and every day, though we usually do not think about them. Now blow in the light.
Wow, the dust particles are moving and mixing very fast.
By watching these particulates, we can get an idea of just how volatile the atmosphere is. Imagine what happens outside as storms blow the Earth's atmosphere this way and that. Imagine how quickly the gases in our atmosphere are mixed together. It only takes a few days for particulates from one part of the Earth to be blown all over the planet. Dust particles from the Sahara Desert are blown into the atmosphere and end up all over the Earth.
Bhaiya, how big is the atmosphere?
The Earth's atmosphere extends outward to a distance of approximately 480 kilometers. However, the bulk of that atmosphere is compressed into the first 16 kilometers. The higher that one travels, the less compressed the atmosphere becomes, and the less pressure there is exerted on the items in that atmosphere.
What is the atmosphere made of?
The most abundant gases found in our atmosphere are nitrogen and oxygen. Nitrogen makes up around 78% of the total atmosphere, while oxygen makes up 21%. The remaining 1% is made up mostly of a gas called argon. This means that with each breath you take, you are breathing 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen and 1% argon. with trace amounts of other gases such as methane, hydrogen, helium, neon, krypton, carbon dioxide, and a form of oxygen known as ozone.
How does nitrogen end up in air?
Nitrogen is added into the atmosphere as plants and animals decay or is burnt, as well as through volcanic eruptions and the decay of some types of non-organic materials.
Wait a minute. Are we saying that nitrogen is constantly being added to the atmosphere? If this is true, then why doesn't the amount of nitrogen in the atmosphere continually increase? Why don't animals die from lack of oxygen?
The answer to this question is simple. While nitrogen is constantly being added to the atmosphere, it is also constantly being removed or cleansed from the atmosphere. The small amount of nitrogen is removed by living organisms. Rain and snow also wash nitrogen out of the atmosphere. The amount of nitrogen being added to the atmosphere and the amount being removed are perfectly balanced, ensuring that the total amount remains constant.
How is oxygen added to the air?
Oxygen is added to our atmosphere by plants as they utilize photosynthesis to convert sunlight into energy. This oxygen is later removed from the air around us by animals and other life forms. Oxygen is the most important of the gases in our atmosphere in relation to animal life. Almost all animals use oxygen as a critical ingredient for the processes of life. Without it, each of us and most of the animals on earth would perish in a matter of a few minutes.
Which are the gases that affect our weather?
Most of the gases in our atmosphere have little to no effect on our weather patterns. However, a few gases have a significant effect on the weather that we experience around the world.
Which are these gases?
Carbon dioxide is one of these gases. The gas known as carbon dioxide has the unique characteristic of absorbing infrared radiation or the heat sent to the earth by the sun. This helps us insulate the earth and to keep the lower atmosphere warm enough for life to exist. Carbon dioxide exists in the atmosphere naturally. In fact, this is one gas that even you have an important role in helping add to the air.
I do? You are joking, aren't you?
No, I am not. Each time you breathe out, your body releases small amounts of carbon dioxide. Over the last 100 years or so, humans have been artificially adding a significantly higher amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This has mainly been through the burning of fossil fuels.
What will happen if carbon dioxide levels become too high?
This is unknown, but many scientists believe that there is a possibility that the Earth's temperature will rise, causing many unpredictable effects. Earth's sister planet Venus is a good example of what happens when there is too much carbon dioxide in the air. The planet Venus is almost exactly the same size as the Earth and is made up of just about the same materials. For many decades, scientists believed that life might thrive on the surface of this celestial neighbor. However, as we learned more about Venus, it was discovered that the levels of carbon dioxide in the planet's atmosphere was much higher than that of our own atmosphere. The result of these high levels of carbon dioxide is that much of the sun's heat has been trapped on the planet, driving the atmosphere on the surface up to hundreds of degrees. It is much too hot for life.
Bhaiya, what is ozone?
Another important gas found in the atmosphere of the Earth is known as ozone. Ozone is a molecule made up of 3 oxygen atoms. This gas is mainly found in a layer of the atmosphere, commonly referred to as ozone layer. The ozone layer lies approximately 9 miles above the surface of the Earth and continues onward to about 30 miles above Earth's surface. This gas has the unique ability to absorb the sun's ultraviolet radiation. Like a giant sheet of sunscreen, it protects animals and plants from getting too much of the sun's brutal ultraviolet rays. Without this protection, conditions on this planet would be very hazardous to life forms.
Bhaiya, what is humidity?
Water vapor present in the air is called humidity. Water vapor is also an important gas to consider when studying the atmosphere. The amount of water vapor found in the air remains constant on average. However, it can vary greatly from one place to another. Some parts of the earth are prone to high humidity levels, while other locations have very dry air.
What effect does this water vapor have on the atmosphere?
Much of what we consider weather is caused by water vapor. The clouds in the sky are largely made up of it, and it is the condensation of this vapor into droplets that creates rain and snow. Water vapor also has a significant impact on temperature.
How does this happen?
Consider your body. When your body becomes too hot, it has a natural built-in mechanism for cooling itself down. This mechanism is known as sweating. As the sweat evaporates off your body, it carries the excess heat with it into the air. The same happens with the surface on the earth. As water evaporates, heat is carried from the earth's surface into the atmosphere. Likewise, as rain falls down, heat can be transferred from the atmosphere back to the ground.
Why is the sky a light shade of baby blue? Is it because of the water vapor?
This is one of the first questions that children often inquire of their parents. What makes the sky blue? Why is it not red, pink or green? The answer to this question can be found by looking at the particulates floating in the air. The Earth's atmosphere is filled with trillions of tiny dust particles. Most of these particles or particulates are too small to be seen with the human eye. The smallest particulates are by coincidence the same length as the wavelength of blue light. As the light from our sun shines into the atmosphere, most of the colors are able to reach the Earth's surface uninterrupted. However, because blue light has a wavelength that is the same size as the particulates in the air, this light is scattered in every direction. This blue light bounces from particulate to particulate until it eventually reaches our eyes. For this reason, no matter what direction you look in the sky, it appears to be blue. This blue light originated with the sun, was bounced around in the sky many times, and then eventually reached your eyes.
So the atmosphere is one homogeneous mixture of air extending up to the outer space.
In order to better understand our atmosphere, scientists have divided it into several layers. These layers are divided based on the characteristics of the gases found at that height. Imagine a layered cake. A layered cake is made out of layers of different ingredients. The first layer might be cake mix. On top of that, a cook could put a layer of pudding. On top of that layer, they perhaps could put another layer of cake mix, following by a layer of whipped cream, and so forth. Each layer in our atmosphere is referred to as a sphere. The first layer of the atmosphere is fortunately not made out of cake, but rather it is made out of gases that we breathe every day. This layer is called the troposphere. The troposphere is the layer that we live in. The next layer of our atmosphere is called the stratosphere. Above the stratosphere lies the mesosphere, followed by the thermosphere, and finally the exosphere. The mesosphere and thermosphere are often referred to as together the ionosphere because of the way they reflect the ionized energy of the sun.
Are there borders between these layers?
In order to help scientists identify the border between each of these layers, scientists have given special names to the boundaries between a number of them. The boundary between the troposphere and the stratosphere is referred to as the tropopause. The border between the stratosphere and mesosphere is called the stratopause. And the line separating the mesosphere from the thermosphere is called the mesopause.
So are these boundaries rigid?
It is important that you understand a few things about these layers. First of all, Even though scientists have given special names to the boundary between each layer, this does not mean that there is an actual clearly visible border. If you were traveling up through the atmosphere in a rocket ship, you would not see any sudden changes as you went through one layer to the next. As you went from one layer to the next. Instead, the change is gradual. The troposphere slowly changes, mixing with the stratosphere. The higher you travel, the less and less the air around you will resemble the air found in the troposphere, and the more and more it will resemble the air found in the stratosphere. Secondly, these layers of our atmosphere are not always at the same altitudes or heights all around the earth or throughout the year. The layers of our atmosphere expands with increased temperature and contract with cooler temperature. Thus, you can imagine that in the winter, the lower layer of the atmosphere contracts, becoming shallower, while in the summer it expands, becoming deeper. When it is winter in the northern hemisphere, such as in Europe, Asia and North America, it is summer in the southern hemisphere, such as in Australia, parts of Africa and South America. Thus, while the troposphere is thin over the northern hemisphere, it is at the same time thicker over the southern hemisphere. On average, the troposphere extends from the surface of the earth upwards to an altitude of 7 miles. Remember that the top of the troposphere is called the tropopause. The stratosphere then extends from the tropopause as an altitude of around 20 miles above sea level. The mesosphere extends from the stratopause to around 50 miles above sea level. The thermosphere begins at the top of mesosphere or at the mesopause. There is no definite top to the thermosphere. Instead, it gradually mixes into the exosphere.
So you are saying that the Earth's atmosphere is divided up into 5 major layers. Exosphere, the last layer and the thinnest. It goes all the way to 10,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Thermosphere. The thermosphere is next and the air is very thin here. Temperatures can get extremely hot in the thermosphere. Mesosphere. The mesosphere covers the next 50 miles between the stratosphere. This is where most meteors burn up upon entry. The coldest place on Earth is at the top of the mesosphere. Stratosphere. The stratosphere extends for the next 32 miles after the troposphere. Unlike the troposphere, the stratosphere gets its heat by the ozone layer, absorbing radiation from the sun. As a result, it gets warmer the further away you get from the Earth. Weather balloons go as high as the stratosphere. Troposphere. The troposphere is the layer next to the ground or surface of the Earth. It covers around 30,000 to 50,000 feet high. This is where we live and also where planes fly. Around 80% of the mass of the atmosphere is in the troposphere. The troposphere is heated by the surface of the Earth.
That is right. Now you have understood what atmosphere is.
Where does outer space start?
There is no clear definition between the Earth's atmosphere and outer space. There are a few official guidelines. Most are between 50 and 80 miles from the surface of the Earth.
Bhaiya, tell me, why is air important?
Air is needed by almost all the living things living on Earth. Most plants and animals take in air, use the oxygen in it, and give out another gas, carbon dioxide. This process is called respiration. Air also protects life on Earth by absorbing harmful ultraviolet solar radiation and reducing temperature extremes between day and night.
What are the properties of air?
The main properties of air are that it occupies space, it has weight, and it is needed for burning, and that it exerts pressure.
I don't understand what you are saying, Bhaiya. Please give an example for each.
Let me show you. Let us press a piece of cotton wool into the bottom of a glass. Now carefully put the glass upside down into a bowl of water. Take the glass out. You will find that the cotton wool is dry. This shows that water was not able to enter the glass.
Why?
This is because the space inside the glass was full of air. Now do the same experiment again, but this time tilt the glass when it is inside the water. You will observe air bubbles coming out from the glass.
Can water now enter the glass and wet the cotton wool?
Yes, because the air has escaped out and the space in the glass is no longer filled with air. Now let me show you that air has weight. Take two balloons of the same size. Fill them tightly with air. Tie them at the two ends of a meter scale or a stick about 1 meter long. Hang the scale by a string tied to its center. Shift the positions of the balloons to balance them. Now take out the air from one of the balloons and hang it from the same place. What do you notice? Which side of the meter scale goes down?
The side of the meter scale with the air-filled balloon goes down.
This shows that a balloon full of air is heavier than a balloon with no air in it. Thus, air has weight.
Now show me that air is needed for burning.
Fix a candle on the table and light it.
It is burning.
Now invert a glass over the candle. You will find that the candle goes out after a few seconds. This shows that the candle needs something to burn, which it could not get when it was covered with a glass. This something is air.
The candle burnt for a few seconds even after it was covered.
That is because there was some air in the glass. Now cover the candle with a big jar instead of a small glass. The candle will continue burning for a longer time.
Is it because the jar has more air in it?
Correct! Now let us see how air exerts pressure. Fill this glass completely with water. Cover the mouth of the glass with a piece of stiff cardboard. Now press the cardboard with your hand and invert the glass. Remove your hand from the cardboard.
No, the water will fall.
Go ahead, try it. What do you observe? Does the cardboard fall?
No. Why?
The water in the glass pushes down the cardboard, but still the cardboard does not fall. This is because air pushes up the cardboard with greater force from below. This is called air pressure. Do you know that air presses from all sides? Let me show you.
Take a plastic soft drink bottle with a screw cap. Now pour this warm water into the bottle. Let the water stay for about a minute. The steam produced due to the warm water will drive out much of the air from the bottle. Now screw the cap on the bottle. Seal the bottle top by putting plasticine over the cap. Now lay the bottle in a bowl and pour ice water over it to cool it. The steam inside the water condenses. Now there is very little air in the bottle. Make the bottle stand upright. What happened? Why did the bottle collapse?
The air pressure inside the bottle is low because there is very little air in it. The pressure of the air outside is larger and crushes the bottle from all sides.
What are the uses of air pressure?
We make use of air pressure in several ways in our daily life. We use air pressure to drink using a straw. When we suck at the straw, the air in it is removed. Air pressure on the cold drink in the bottle forces the cold drink to rise up in the straw. Thus, the cold drink reaches our mouth through the straw and we enjoy drinking it. A doctor's syringe also works in the same way. When the plunger of the syringe is pushed in, there is no air in the syringe. As the plunger is pulled, air pressure forces the liquid in the medicine bottle to rise up through the needle. A dropper also works in the same way.
What is air pollution?
Air pollution is the contamination of air by the discharge of harmful substances. One type of air pollution is the release of particles into the air from burning fuel for energy. Natural phenomena such as the eruption of a volcano also causes air pollution.
What are the uses of air?
Air contains oxygen, which is essential for life. All living things respire by breathing in air. The air we breathe in is called inhaled air, and the air we breathe out is exhaled air. The nitrogen present is essential for the growth of plants. Plants take in nitrogen directly from the air or the soil. Carbon dioxide from the air is used by plants for photosynthesis or the process of making their food. The air that we breathe out also has lot of carbon dioxide. Air supports burning or combustion. Oxygen present in the air is needed for burning. This property is used to cook food, generate heat and electricity, run industries and drive vehicles. The presence of nitrogen in the air reduces the activity of oxygen. If air contained only oxygen, even small fires would turn into explosions. The ozone layer protects us from the harmful ultraviolet rays of the sun, and the atmosphere also protects us from the heat of the sun. However, air pollution causes damage to the ozone layer. Moving air or wind has a great force. It helps movement of sailboats and gliders. It runs windmills which are used to generate electricity. Wind also helps in the dispersal of seeds. Compressed air is also used in many ways. It is used to fill air in tires and also in many types of machines like the drills used by dentists or the machines used in mining and digging.
Bhaiya, like air, water too is an important part of our environment and is essential for life. Tell me something about it.
Water is the most common substance on the earth. It is necessary for life. Several life processes going on inside our body need water. That is why it is difficult to live for more than a few days without water. All living things need water. Plants cannot live long without water. We need water for cooking, bathing, working and construction work. Scientists believe that the amount of water on earth does not change appreciatively over time. In other words, the amount of water that is on the earth today is the same amount that was on the earth during the reign of the dinosaurs.
Why is water so important to life?
It all has to do with the unique properties that water exhibits. Firstly, it is the only substance on earth that is in liquid form at the temperatures commonly found on the surface of our planet. Secondly, it is a superb solvent, meaning that other substances regularly and easily dissolve into it. In addition, water has the unique property of expanding as it freezes. Because water expands becoming less dense, frozen water, more commonly known as ice, floats. This is very important because it protects the water underneath, insulating it from freezing.
What would happen if water became denser?
It would sink, allowing other layer of water to freeze. Eventually, all the water across the entire surface of our planet would freeze, making life impossible. Try this. Take a glass of water. Now add some sugar to it. What happened?
It dissolved.
That is right. Just like sugar, many things dissolve in the water. This is how dust, dirt and other particulates become a part of the water and pollute it. The impurities that pollute water can be classified as soluble and insoluble impurities. Soluble impurities are salts and minerals that dissolve in water. Insoluble impurities are pieces of stone, sand, mud, chalk and several other substances. Sometimes water also contains germs which cause diseases. Many soluble and insoluble impurities are introduced in water when waste from factories is dumped in rivers, lakes or seas.
We cannot use such water for drinking. How do we purify the water to make it usable?
To make water suitable for drinking, all impurities and disease-causing germs must be removed from it. Most soluble impurities are not harmful and are not removed to make water fit for drinking. This can be done by sedimentation and decantation and by filtration.
What is sedimentation and decantation?
In this method, Water is allowed to stand undisturbed in a container. After some time, the insoluble substances such as mud settle down at the bottom of the container as sediment. The process is called sedimentation. Then pour the clean water into a separate container. This is called decantation.
This is what Grandma does when she uses alum in drinking water and allows it to stand for some time before emptying the water on top in another vessel.
The alum that Grandma uses helps the sedimentation process.
What is filtration?
Insoluble impurities are removed by passing the impure water through a filter paper. In filtration, a circular piece of filter paper is taken and folded twice to make a cone. This paper cone is placed inside a funnel. A beaker is placed below the funnel. Then the mixture is poured into the funnel. Sand is retained on the filter paper and clean water comes down into the beaker.
How do we remove soluble impurities?
It is more difficult to separate soluble impurities than insoluble ones. Soluble impurities are separated using evaporation or distillation.
What is evaporation?
Take some table salt and dissolve it in water. Pour the salt water into a china dish. Boil the water till all the water evaporates. The salt remains in the china dish.
What is distillation? Where is distilled water used?
Distilled water is the purest form of water. It does not contain any impurities or germs. It is used in car batteries, in science experiments, and in medicines. Distillation is a method which gives us both the solute and the solvent separately. On heating the solution, the water evaporates. It enters the condenser, which is kept cool by the cold water circulating around it. On entering the cool condenser, the hot steam changes into water again. It collects in the flask below. This water is totally pure and free from impurities. This water is totally pure and free from any impurities. It is called distilled water.
But we can't use water purified by either evaporation or distillation for drinking. How do we purify water for drinking purposes?
Water contains germs that cause diseases. Therefore, we must make drinking water. Apart from sedimentation and decantation and filtering, boiling and adding chlorine may be used to purify water and make it potable.
What does potable mean?
Potable means fit for drinking.
Tell me how boiling helps purify water.
One of the simplest ways to purify drinking water is by boiling it. Boiling water for about 10 minutes kills the germs present in water. We can drink it after cooling. Boiled water should be stored in clean and covered pots and bottles. Another method of purifying water is by adding chlorine. We can buy chlorine tablets at shops. Adding chlorine tablets in water kills germs and makes the water pure. This process of purifying water is called chlorination.
Is the water supply in large towns also purified like this?
In large towns, the water supplied to the public is filtered and purified. Water supplied to our homes is treated in 3 steps to purify it in the city water works. They are sedimentation. Water from a river or lake is collected in huge tanks and allowed to stand. Here, heavier particles of insoluble impurities settle down. Filtration. The water then passes through filters made of chemicals, sand, and gravel to remove fine particles of insoluble impurities. Chlorination. Small amounts of chlorine are added to water to kill germs.
Friends, let us quickly go through what we learnt today. The envelope of air around the earth is called the atmosphere. The atmosphere extends to several hundred kilometers above the earth. It helps to provide conditions in which plants and animals can live. Living things need air and water to live. The atmosphere is divided into 5 layers: troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. Air contains 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, argon and some other gases. It also contains varying amounts of dust, smoke and water vapor. Air occupies space, has weight and exerts pressure. Air is necessary for burning. Water contains soluble and insoluble impurities and germs. Insoluble impurities can be removed by sedimentation and decantation and by filtration. Soluble impurities can be removed by evaporation and distillation. Disease germs in water can be killed by chlorination. We must drink purified water. So friends, now it is time for me to go. Bye for now.